Hello and welcome to West Wales. If we've not met, I'm Becca, and in today's video I'm going to be looking at my bees and then just coming back to the house and talking a little bit about what you should think about if you are interested in becoming a beekeeper. It's warm and calm, which is absolutely perfect day for doing the bees. So it's about 15 degrees, which is 15 degrees centigrade. I will put the Fahrenheit on the screen. And this is going to be really the last time we open the bees up until spring. I'm just going to check for stores. I've got to take off the queen excluders, and I will talk a little bit more about that once we're there, or maybe when we come back. And then I've got some things to show you and talk about, but that's all for later in the video. First thing I'm going to do is just give you a quick run round of the that didn't make any sense. Give you a quick look at the equipment that I've got. Very importantly, I've got a bit of fire, because before I go and inspect my bees, I just like to give my beekeeping tools a quick wash, because they've been sat in the shed for about 5 weeks since the last time I used them, so they might have picked up a few bugs, so I just want to do that before I go up. Anyway, I'm going to turn the camera around, show you the equipment, and then how much footage I'll get actually at the bees, I'm not sure, because I do have to concentrate on the beekeeping rather than the videoing, so we'll see. Anyway, I'll turn the camera around and show you the equipment. Okay, so first things first, I have something to light my smoker with, and I've got enough gas in there, and then I have 2 lighters, but you can see they've been in the shed, so I just need to check that they're actually going to, yeah, they are actually going to light. No, that one's not. Ah, yes it is. And then I also have belt and braces, my clicker, and that actually will light the gas if it all goes a bit horribly wrong. So as I have an out apiary, I like to make sure I've got all the equipment with me. Then smoker fuel, and I always take up plenty of smoker fuel. So this is cut up cardboard, plus I also use these dried pine cones. They make really good smoker fuel. Smoker, and you can see it has been repaired with my go-to fix, gaffer tape. And guess what? I also take gaffer tape up with me. So these are just marigolds. These are not special beekeeping gloves. You can get very expensive special beekeeping gloves. To be honest, I find a pair of marigolds absolutely fine. I mean, they won't stop stings. If a bee stings you, you're going to get stung through this, but they just reduce it a bit. And also, very importantly, I have my Piriton. I don't react particularly badly, but I just always take an antihistamine, just in case. Water. Thirsty business beekeeping, because you're wearing a lot of clothes, so you get quite hot. Then these are straps for strapping up the beehives so they don't blow over in the winter, because we get pretty high winds, although it's very sheltered where we have the hives. Just like to have them strapped up. Then gauntlets. Now you'll see that these are not particularly sort of sparkling white, and that's because when I wash these, I don't wash them with detergent, I just wash them with water. And the reason for that is that bees do not like the smell of detergent. So all my beekeeping equipment kind of looks a bit kind of, I don't know, well, it hasn't seen any Persil, put it that way. And yeah, that is on purpose. I have my hat just to keep the veil off my face. So I've got my beekeeping suit with the veil, and that peak just stops the veil falling onto my face, because if you get a particularly cross set of bees, you really don't want them. Millie. So suit and veil, and as you can see, most definitely not brilliant white. But once I've finished today, this will go in the machine on a boil wash just to get rid of any bacteria or any kind of, I don't know, any nasties. And I do that every time I've inspected the bees. And yeah, okay. And lastly, there's my hive tool, which I am now going to clean with a bit of fire.
Beekeeping follows the rhythms of the season, and autumn is no different. What I need to do here is just check my bees have enough stores to get them through the winter, and I'm taking off any excess space that might get cold, which means that they wouldn't get through the winter as well. I'm also taking off the queen excluders. The queen excluder stops the queen from going up into the honey stores and laying brood, which is what she naturally wants to do, but she has got enough space in the brood box. It is really key to do this after she has finished laying her winter bees. And one of the most important things we can do as beekeepers is learn to read our bees and assess what they're doing. And that only comes with time and practice. If you're someone who wants to take up beekeeping in retirement, I think it's worth noting that this could take you at least 5 or 6 years to really get the hang of. And so there's no time like the present, and it definitely is something that if you want to do it, or you've always wanted to do it, take action and find yourself a local beekeeping course. We have 2 types of hive on this site. I'm working on a Langstroth, and the other hive, the yellow hive, is what's known as a national.
So these are now bee free, and before I put them in the car, I'm just going to put this over them. It just, belt and braces, just in case I missed a bee, because I don't really want to have a load of bees flying around in my car. So, well, that would have been quicker if I had actually taken off that second super before now. What had happened is, rather than filling one super and then move on to the second super, they just went up, which they tend to do, and it's just, you know, life got in the way and I didn't get back to taking off that second super after I'd extracted. But I just shuffled the frames around. They've got lots of stores. Fingers crossed they won't need feeding. They are still foraging, and I can smell the ivy. I have been stung in ivy season before, and it's just about the only time I really react. And I think it's the ivy. It's the ivy kind of pollen, the ivy nectar. So I haven't been stung yet. Fingers crossed. Between recording this and getting to the car, I won't. I mean, they're very calm, so I shouldn't. But yeah, I have learned over the years that you just have to respect them, because I don't speak bee. So we are back. The veil goes in an old pillowcase, just so that you don't rip the veil-y bit. I'm sure that has a proper name. Anyway, you don't want to rip that bit with zips and things, so I put that in an old pillowcase, and yeah, in the wash, in a very hot wash. So these are the supers that we bought back. Now, can I just point out that this is actually beehive paint on here, so it's non-toxic, and yeah, so I don't mind covering the beehives with it. Anyway, right, hopefully I haven't brought any passengers, because we are more than 3 miles away from the out apiary. So if I've got any bees in here, they are not going to survive, because they will not be able to get back to the hives, which is why I was fairly particular about making sure I didn't have any bees with me. Okay, so after a good season in the field, and it's been a really wet year, this all needs a good clean. I mean, I have cleaned these off before, but you can see they've got loads of loads of honeycomb on, but we'll sort those out. What I need to do now is get the frames in the freezer. Now I'm just going to scrape the top of these. So these are drawn, and drawn frames are quite valuable. So they're going to go in the freezer to kill any bugs. I'm going to clean this box and then wrap it up and store it for the winter. So these are Langstroth frames, and they're a bit bigger than the Nationals. And these also, oh lovely, a snail. So there's a bit of wild comb. They haven't really been drawn. They're falling apart. So I think I'm going to have to renew all these. We have, I mean, that Langstroth just has not really worked. I don't think they like it very much. Anyway, freezing. If I can save any of these frames, I will, but I'm going to have to renew the wax because yeah, bit of a state. So you can see how well the National frames fit in. The Langstroth frames do not fit in quite as well. Right, okay, we're about a day later from when I filmed that last bit of video, and I'm in the woods because I'm multitasking. I'm walking the dog and making a YouTube video because that's kind of how my life is sometimes. Now, I thought I would start with the 3 most common questions that I get as a beekeeper from people who are interested in keeping bees. And the first one is, do you get stung? Well, the simple answer is yes, you do. I don't get stung very often. When I started out, I got stung a lot more than I do now. But you've got to bear in mind, you're putting your hand inside a bee's nest. And when you're doing a manipulation, you're really upsetting them. So yes, they do sting you from time to time. And it's their last line of defense. They really don't like doing it because 9 times out of 10, it's going to kill them, and they know that. I probably get stung maybe twice a year these days, and generally it's if a bee has got caught in, I'm looking down to my elbow, which of course you can't see, it's get caught in the crease of my bee suit. I get stung then. And then sometimes if I've been a bit daft, or if I've kind of been a bit careless and I've sort of tapped a frame a bit too hard, then I get stung on my hands. But it really is maybe once or twice a year. The only time I really react is when they've been on ivy, because I'm obviously really allergic to ivy pollen, as you might be able to tell because there's still lots of ivy pollen about, and I have been full of allergies for weeks. Anyway, okay, so that's being stung. Yep, you do get stung. Do they swarm? Yes, they swarm. You can do things to try and mitigate that, and ideally you don't want them to swarm because you're going to lose half your bees, and they might end up in a neighbour's garden, they might cause a problem, so you really don't want them to swarm. There are things you can do to stop them swarming. And sorry, the dog started barking because she could hear another dog. Anyway, okay, so what do you do to stop them swarming? There are various things you do as part of your hive management that can make the bees think that they've already swarmed, so they stop having the swarming urge. And you know, that is a whole great long video, probably video series rather than just one video on how you do that. The question I get asked is, do the bees die? Can they die quite easily? Yes, they do. We have a problem with varroa in this country. We also have a new increased problem of the Asian hornet, which has really devastated hives in France, and we're starting to see them in this country. And you also get just things like isolation starvation, and that's what we've lost hives to before. In the winter, the bees cluster around the queen to keep her warm, and then they have stores all around that cluster so they can just nip out and get something to eat and bring it back to the queen and keep the cluster healthy and warm and fed. But what you can get is where there's plenty of stores, but the weather suddenly goes really cold. So a leaf just hit me on the ear. It's autumn, isn't it? Yeah, so it gets really cold, so the cluster can kind of get smaller to keep warm, and there isn't actually any food around there. So there can be lots and lots of food in the hive, but it's not close enough to the cluster because they've had to contract to keep warm, and then you get a thing called isolation starvation. And that has happened to us, and it's pretty difficult to solve. I mean, you can try and kind of insulate your hives, that does sometimes work, but it is something that happens. So having said all those things, how do you go about starting with beekeeping? My best advice would be to go online and look out your local beekeeping association. In the UK, you've got a British Beekeepers Association. They all have county divisions, and they will run beekeeping courses. They're very affordable. They also do taster days, because there's nothing worse than spending a whole load of money on kit and a course, and you kind of open up the bees for the first time. The bees go up in your face and you go, oh, this is not for me. So do a taster day. Now, the type of beekeeping I do is basically what they teach with the British Beekeeping Association. There are other types of beekeeping. There is natural beekeeping. I cannot talk to you about that because I don't practice it. And there definitely are courses online, so you can look that out. And there are also courses, sort of in-person courses. Beekeeping is part science, part art. And one of the things you really need to learn is how to read your bees. And you can only do that through practice. You can read as many books as you like. And I will link some books for you, because there are a couple of really good books. And they're great for reference. But until you've actually done it yourself, really, you know nothing. And I've been beekeeping for 10 years. My dad was a beekeeper for, ages. He's not now, but it was a long time he was a beekeeper. And yeah, you learn by doing. That is the best way. So the other thing I think you need to think about is where are you going to locate your beehives? And you've got to remember that bees forage within a sort of 1.5 mile radius to where their hive is. So within that 1.5 mile, you've got to have some good forage. And very often that is actually some scrubland. So a weedy patch, somewhere where you've got ivy and dandelions and brambles, wildflowers. They of course will collect from lots of different cultivated flowers, and certainly if you've got fruit trees in your garden, they will pollinate those and they will collect the nectar and the pollen from them. But actually they need a really good, rich variety of different flowers and plants around to really see them through the whole year. You can most definitely be successful as an urban beekeeper. Lots of very successful urban beekeepers. It is more difficult, strangely, to keep bees in the countryside where you have more of a monoculture. So if you don't have a mixture of environments in your location, so if you're somewhere where maybe there's just rapeseed and not a lot else, they will do very well when the rape is in season, but maybe not in other times of the year. You might find yourself feeding them. I think in the US, what do you call rapeseed in the US? Oh, I don't know. It's yellow flower, member of the mustard family. You make vegetable oil out of it. I'll look it up and put it on screen. Anyway, so that is something to consider. You also have to consider it can be quite a physical thing to do. A small national hive, mostly we use national hives, if that super is full of honey, it could easily weigh 15 kilos, and that's quite a lot to kind of lift about. And so you have to make sure that it's at a comfortable working height, whatever your comfortable working height is. The thing that will probably stop me beekeeping is going to be my back and whether it will survive. After 30 years in the catering industry, my back is a little bit dodgy, so I just have to be a little bit careful. That might be something that stops me. Andrew has now found that his fatigue and pain are at a point where he can't really come and beekeep anymore. We used to be a tag team. After he had his stroke, he would do the brain work, I would do the physical manipulation, and he would actually come up to the bees with me. He really can't do that anymore. So that might be another reason that we decide to not carry on. I definitely do not want to spend hours telling you that, you know, don't do it, but you just have to think about these things. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the house, and the frames have been in the freezer. I just need to finish clearing up and cleaning those super boxes so I can put the frames back in, seal them up, put them in the shed so that they don't get wax moth, and they're all ready for me to pull out next season. So I'll see you back at the house. Well, the light is fading fast, so I'm going to try and wrap this video up. The frames are here. They're quite brittle when they come out of the freezer, so just let them warm up a little bit. They're then in black plastic, sealed up, and that's against wax moth. So I'm going to put them in the shed, and then next year I will take a view on whether I reuse them. Some of them will be good to reuse, some of them won't. And I think there is a whole other video on how I actually process the beeswax. I have been asked about how to process beeswax, so I think I will do a video on that. I've got a few things to show you, as in what the beeswax looks like at the moment, because I did collect a bit, and there's also old frames that are going to be recycled. So I'm going to put these in the shed, turn the camera around and show you the beeswax. Back in a minute. So this is the stuff that I scraped off the top of those queen excluders, and it's a right mixture of colours, and it'll probably melt down into something that's that colour. Now I've also kept a few different things. Now this stuff is cappings, and when you extract honey, all the cells have been sealed by the bees with a little bit of wax, and it's very, very light in colour. And if you want to make cosmetics, it's absolutely the best thing to make cosmetics with. So that's what I'll be doing with this. Then, now this is wild comb, and I pulled this out of the hive. You can see there's some ivy honey in here. And these are drone cells. They're a bit bigger than honey cells. I don't know whether I can show you something in comparison. Yeah, so this is, I mean, if bees were in a, I don't know, an old log or something, a hollowed out tree, this is the stuff they would make. But because we manage them in a certain way, they don't make drone cells, they make worker cells, which we use for the honey. And they, I mean, it's not just worker cells, they are honey cells. But I'm going to digress if I carry on with it. This is all kind of stuff that I've just scraped off the top of the frames over the last few months, and I will melt that down and process it. I have had a request for a processing video for beeswax, so I will do that. Now I'm going to show you something else as well. Okay, right, in this bag we have got old frames that need melting down, and you can see these are old brood frames, and the wax goes really, really dark, and so you try and melt that down separately and use it for something like firelighters, or I don't know, making batik wax, something like that. And then this stuff, these are Okay, these are damaged commercial frames. And this is what it looks like when you buy it from Thorns or wherever you buy it from. And you make up your frames. But these have got broken, so I'm going to melt those down. And this really pale stuff, this is good for cosmetics. But that's a whole other video. I hope you found some of that information useful. If you're considering keeping bees, then I'm hoping that the little kind of bits that I've given you give you an insight as to whether it's going to be something for you or not. It isn't going to be for everyone, I get that, but some people it's going to be exactly what they need to do in retirement. So as ever, thank you very much for watching, and you know how YouTube works, so you know, do all the things, the follows, the likes, all that stuff that is all good stuff that helps the channel to grow, and I will see you in the next video.